Assalamu alaikum everyone. I'm Anahil Forest Valley and I'm delighted to welcome you all today's interview session. We have the privilege of hosting our distinguished guest, Opemipo, who has made significant strides in his life journey. Today we will have the opportunity to get to know him better, explore his experiences and gain insights from his remarkable achievements. Opimipo, Mr. Opimipo, thank you for joining us today. We are eager to learn more about your life journey and the incredible work you have been involved in. Without further ado, let's delve into the interview and discover the fascinating aspects your personal and professional endeavors. So, welcome, Mr. Opimipo. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
It's my pleasure. So, first of all, please introduce yourself for my viewers.
Okay, so my name is Opemipo Oduntan. I live in Winnipeg, Manitoba. I'm a high school student, and I guess generally I'm focused on creating stuff in my spare time. I have hobbies such as like music and sports, so forth. I'm just overall passionate about making an impact in a way that seems interesting to me.
All right. Thank you for your introduction. So my first question is that can you tell us more about your background and what initially sparked your interest in science, business, and creativity?
Yeah, so I would say initially it would be my parents. My parents, they're both inside like business, and my dad specifically in software. And I think initially the idea, even when I was around 8 years old, of running a business seemed pretty cool to me. So I think that definitely fueled my interest at an early stage. And then from there, my interest only grew as I happened to have friends that also were interested in stock trading, finance, and all the different little perks of business and so forth. And that's how my interest in that specific area grew. And before science became a thing for me, I was more of a mathematics person. And eventually, science became more of a thing for me in a summer, I think about 4 years ago, when I decided to pick interest inside quantum computing over the summer after I watched a video by TED Ed on Schrodinger's cat, and I thought that was really cool. And I devoted the rest of my summer to further trying to understand what was behind that and trying to get my basics down and understand some of the fundamentals behind theories of superposition inside quantum physics and mechanics in general. And so from there, my interest in quantum computing kind of dropped off, but my interest in science was still being continuously fueled by my curiosity.
All right. Thank you for your answer. So now let's move on to next question. My next question is that how did you develop an interest in the neuroscience and AI space? What specific aspects of this field fascinate you the most?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think, funny enough, it was more so the fact that I couldn't choose what to study last year. I couldn't choose what to continue with looking into last year, that I decided to look into AI. And it's because of its diversity, I think, because of how widely applicable AI as a field is. And I already had an interest in software before, and AI seemed like one of those things that I thought I'd never touch, but eventually I did. And it's been a great journey, honestly. And eventually, I started diving into neuroscience because when I was younger, I had the interest of going into medicine, but extending that career to an entrepreneurial standpoint. So I kind of wanted to carry that through in some way by starting my own business in the medical space. But I didn't really know what to do there. I was thinking, oh, maybe I'll start a clinic, maybe I'll end it there, and that will be kind of the rest of my life. But that seemed kind of boring. And so I decided last year that I'd look into what I could use AI for inside an area that I was already previously passionate about. And of course, I kept an open mind, and I didn't only apply AI in a neuroscience space, which would have mostly drawn me to BCIs and so forth. Um, but I also ended up extending it to metabolomics and other various topics that are focused on the advanced application of AI in generation, classification, and so forth.
All right, that's great. So, my third question is that could you provide some details about the ideas you are currently working on the AI plus BCI space? What motivates you to pursue these particular ideas?
Yeah, so to tackle BCI first, initially I started an idea during a hackathon, and then I decided to drop it afterwards, just because the fact that um, it just, if I wasn't working on something that was genuinely interesting to me, it didn't seem like it was going to be entirely worth my time, just because I wouldn't be able to commit and bring it to true fruition. And even last month, I was ready to go into advanced BCI research and develop some new things around the science of thoughts, reading thoughts using BCI devices. The technology is a long ways away, and it's a very advanced topic. So I decided to actually extend my research more in the space of allergies and so forth and immunology. Um, but on the topic of startups, specifically more in the AI space, I've been focused on a new project of mine along with a few other side projects. But a main project would be Pixel GPT. It's a project I designed at the end of May to present at a showcase held by TKS. And at TKS, I was able to present this AI model that's specifically supposed to generate pixel art using generative AI, specifically stable diffusion. And my incentive behind this was mostly focused on the development of AI that could create pixel art for my video games, which is something that I saw apps like Dolly and I guess Stable Diffusion failed to do beforehand. But then I decided I was going to create something for myself that would be able to create custom like pixel art for my video games and so forth for myself and allow me to be more creative in developing video games. So that was kind of my incentive there. So that's the main project I've been developing. Side projects have mostly been like using APIs by OpenAI and other smaller organizations to develop applications that just seem kind of practical to me. And eventually, I might extend them into a plethora of different AI powered applications in one single place. So,
All right, thank you for your answer. So, your Substack newsletter showcase your articles on various tech related subjects. Could you elaborate on the topics you usually cover and the impact you hope to make through your writing?
yeah. So, specifically on Medium, my Medium is mostly focused on writing articles that help me understand the stuff that I've worked on. The interesting thing is, I write actually more for myself than I do for others, as there are several benefits to writing. I find it allows you to properly communicate your thoughts and everything in a cohesive, single place, and it also forces me to actually research and understand the stuff that goes on under the hood of the different AI models and things that I've developed in the past. And another benefit would also be the fact that it adds to my portfolio. So that's definitely been another incentive for me researching and developing and writing articles in various areas so that I can add to my portfolio as well. And like as for my Substack, that's also kind of focused on the topic of self reflection and helping me to understand and learn in in a written form, learn from what I've done over the past month. And because the past year has been so quickly paced and there have been so many things that have been happening, it's really important for me to go back and reflect and make sure I've actually been able to hang on to everything that's happened over the course of those months. And of course, there's the whole portfolio thing. And yeah, so far, those are my major incentives for writing those.
All right, thank you for sharing. Thank you so much for sharing your incredible answer. So my fifth question is that music seems to be a significant hobby for you. How do you incorporate your passion for music into your other endeavors? Do you see any connections between music and your work in science and business?
Hmm. That's a great question. So regarding music, for me, music has mostly been it's been something that I picked up when I was younger. My parents signed me up for piano classes, and I've been kind of forced to continue with music since then. But eventually, it sort of turned into something that I do for myself versus just for my parents. And I think that's where the real value started to come. And so far, it's helped me in a lot of areas, specifically in developing my brain. I think it's really helped in allowing me to productively exercise my brain in a fun and healthy way. And it also acts as like a sort of meditative action as well. So I'm able to I'm able to express myself somewhat in music, though that's not really what I use it the most for. It's just something that that happens to be there. Um, Also, I think like in general, music is just a really nice thing to show off. If you want to make quick friends, music is something that allows you to connect with a wide variety of people in specific niche areas, and I think it's something that can allow you to set yourself apart. Um, in terms of business and science, not specifically. I don't really see any connection whatsoever inside music. It might just be me, but I don't like putting connections where there aren't, so I just kind of leave it as it is. There are two separate things in my life, and I enjoy them as they are.
All right, that's great. So my next session is that learning new languages and exploring different cultures is listed as one of your hobbies. How has this interest influenced your personal and professional growth? Have you ever encountered any challenges or unique experiences while learning a new languages?
Yeah. So that's another great question. Regarding language learning, my original idea around it was it didn't really become a thing for me until maybe the eighth or ninth grade, um, when I didn't really have much else to do over the course of the pandemic, and I decided it might be cool to look into what's happening on other parts of the globe, understand other cultures, other languages, and increase my worldview. That really wasn't what it looked like at the time, but it just also seemed cool to be able to access things that other people might not be able to through the lens of a different language or culture. And I myself am already bilingual in Yoruba and English, um, and I'm somewhat proficient in French as well. Uh, but in regards to general business application, I think especially with meeting so many people online in like worldwide and so forth and forming connections, knowing another language has been sort of a connecting point that has allowed me to form deeper and more meaningful relationships with a lot of my people inside my social network. And I think it also is just there's really no downsides to learning a language. I think like a lot of people think that, oh, everyone's going to speak English anyway, but when you speak another person's language, you speak to their heart versus when you're just speaking to them in like a language that the both of you can understand. So I think it's really valuable to form that deeper connection as well as fostering relationships and exercising your brain through the active language learning.
Thank you so much for your answer. So my next question is, as a basketball enthusiast, have you find any parallel between the skills required in basketball and those needed in entrepreneurship or scientific research? If so, could you share some examples?
Yeah, so I think initially when I started basketball, I didn't really start seeing the connection between entrepreneurship because I wasn't really actively pursuing it at the time. And I was also 12, so that wasn't really something that was on the top of my mind at the time. But yeah, I mean, initially last year, I started seeing the aspect of like teamwork and how it's valuable to be able to cooperate. But I think another thing that basketball does that I think a thing that basketball removes that I think is pretty necessary when you're going into business, at least from my personal perspective, is just the idea of not only working in a team, but also pushing boundaries and looking outside of the box. I think there's a lot of rules, of course, in basketball, and there's a lot of rules in business, of course, as well. But like everybody sort of does one thing, and they stick to that thing, and if it works, it works, and that's how you do the game. Um, but there's never really ever room for experimentation. At least from my personal experience with playing bull, it's a very uniform sort of sport, and it becomes very tactical after some time. And I started losing the fun in it. I'll be honest, but I still play it recreationally and on my school team as well, just because. And of course, I think you can learn a lot more from actually going out there and starting a business and trying to create things with your own goals in mind, with no one but yourself and maybe an accountability partner to motivate you, versus staying on a basketball court and trying to develop those skills there as well. I think there's definitely room for it. Um, Especially in the sense of leadership. But generally, I think one interesting insight I learned from a friend of mine is the fact that the best way to develop yourself personally is through the act of starting a business. Because it forces you to put out your vulnerabilities. It trains you in a lot of different ways that you might not be ready for. And yeah, I think that's just really valuable.
All right, thank you for sharing example. So, how do you manage your time effectively uh, and stay organized while pursuing multiple projects and simultaneously? How do you have any specific strategies or tools that help you maintain productivity and focus?
Yeah, so I have a few tools and also methods. I think I'll highlight one major portion of my success in managing my time over the last year because, believe it or not, before this year I was struggling to manage school alone, but with this year I was able to juggle both school and many other projects as well on the side. So I think some forcing functions for that are this thing called daily updates, where you're supposed to record, say, your weekly goals, um, what you want to work on daily, and you basically have a checklist that allows you to keep track of what you're supposed to complete, what you didn't complete, what you did complete over the course of a single day. And it forces you to reflect and look back and make sure you're using your time properly. And of course, there's also like a reflection portion of it that I personally do for myself, where I put whatever interesting thoughts or whatever interesting things that pop into my mind throughout the day into that specific section, and I just kind of write it down. It functions in two really great ways. One is organization, the second being reflection. And I think those are two major components to a daily update that I really like. And the tools that I would use for something like this are tools like Notion, Google Calendar, and if like you're working in an organization or in a community or something like that, if you're able to tie all your different meetings and events into either a Calendly that's connected to your Google Calendar or your Outlook mail or whatever you want to use, it helps you to stay somewhat organized. And I think the rest is just staying on top of yourself. But the last component I think is extremely important would be an accountability partner. Having someone, a close friend, or someone like a coach that has a vested interest in your success, and often that's fostered through you doing the same thing for them and staying accountable for whatever they're trying to do as well. But basically, they can do things like read your daily update, book a weekly meeting, and you just talk about like how your week has been, what you've been doing, um, and then each person just tries to give as much advice as they can based off of the things that they read inside their daily update. That's why it's really important to reflect truly inside your daily update so that you're able to get the sort of advice that you need from a different perspective that you wouldn't have seen otherwise yourself.
All right, thank you for your answer. So my next question is that what are your long-term goals and aspiration in the field of science, business, and creativity? How do you plan to make significant impact or contribution?
Yeah. So, I mean, I like to look long term, but I also like to look short term. There was a time when I was really looking long term, and I just couldn't stop looking into the future, and I was wondering what exactly is going to happen, right? And I'm heading on this trajectory. School doesn't seem like it's putting me in the right position. What exactly do I do? Um, and I think that was really crippling. But when I started focusing on what I can do now, little steps that I can take, that would be things like the projects I'm working on, the things that I'm researching, things that can help me prepare for whatever path I end up taking in the future. I think those were really valuable for advancing me personally, adding to my personal development. And as for my long term goals themselves, I think specifically one that I deduced that seems to align with some portion of my North Star, which I'm still trying to figure out. Um, and I think the all of life, we're just trying to figure out exactly how to be happy, how to live fulfilled, how to do what we want to do. Um, but I think a portion of that really aligned with this one specific goal was definitely the goal itself was to start a health tech hub that's similar to Moonshot Factory by Google X. Um, it's kind of following Silicon Valley sort of vibes. I'm not really sure if you could call it that, but more focused on getting a bunch of innovators together in the health tech space and having them work together to develop technologies and stuff that can um, that can act as innovations in health care. So that's specifically where I'm heading or trying to develop in the future.
All right, great. So, what is your favorite book or book series and why?
Yeah, so
So,
I don't think I have a specific book series that like I used to read a lot of nonfiction before, but I don't think that was specifically valuable to me, though it was entertaining. Um, but a specific book that I found really interesting, and it wasn't even really a self improvement book; it was just really fascinating. Was this book called Outliers, and it was by Malcolm Gladwell. He's one of my favorite authors, and it was focused on the concept of some of the factors that play into success. And it wasn't really focused on self improvement. This is how you align yourself so that you can have the proper amounts of success in your life. Um, but it actually kind of outlined using facts and a bunch of different things that tie together inside the book and his research to outline the fact that a good portion of success is just luck. And I was kind of just like left clueless after reading the book. It was really interesting because there were a lot of different facts that they put out, like hockey players in specific months tend to that are born in specific months tend to end up having more successful careers in the NHL. There are specific months where apparently soccer players, football players are specifically most of them are born and end up becoming football players at a large scale in places like the World Cup and so forth and league football. Um, but the thing is, after reading that book and months passed, I happened to speak with a person that talked about the concept of luck being a function the net or the surface area of um, of the net you cast for opportunities. Whereas when you're trying to increase the surface area of the net that you use to capture opportunities, that can be through networking, that can be through this podcast right now. Um, when you increase that surface area, it makes it more likely for good things to happen to you. And I think that's really important.
All right. So, lastly, can you share any advice or lesson learned from your journey so far that may inspire other and it's aspiring scientists and entrepreneurs?
Hmm. Well, I mean, I'm not sure if I have on my LinkedIn bio that I'm a fully fledged entrepreneur because I won't really ever consider myself one until I have a business that's completely running and it's completely successful. I'll consider myself an innovator that's just kind of trying to build things because they're interesting. But I think entrepreneur is an area that I'm heading to, and it's a place that I aspire for. And I think generally what I've learned so far as an innovator is the fact that you really just have to do it. Like, the funny thing is how we spend a lot of time talking. It's very easy for smart people to go on and on and on. And that's something you can recognize in academia, where researchers will often just go on and on about whatever topic they're really passionate about or really have a vested interest in. Um, and then what would happen is that nothing. It just ends up as like a journal or a research paper. That's very respectable, but it doesn't yield results. Not until someone else decides to pick up that research paper and turn it into something tangible. So I think if you can be that person that turns whatever you research or whether you're interested in into something tangible, it doesn't even have to make money. It just has to be interesting to you. The most important thing is to create, get stuff out there, and make sure that there are other people to follow you along, because no person can truly succeed on their own. So I think it's really important to network, get stuff out, and build things so that other people can begin to recognize you and become have a vested interest in your journey as an entrepreneur.
All right, thank you for your advice. So, as we our interview with Mr. Opemipo comes to the close, we would like to extend our sincere gratitude for sharing your remarkable journey and insight and experiences with us. Your passion for science, business, and creativity is truly inspiring. Mr. Opimipo, we commend your dedication to the fields of neuroscience, AI, entrepreneurship, as well as your pursuits of knowledge through writing and diverse hobbies. Your ability to combine your interest and talent is such a harmonious way is truly admirable. We would also like to thank all our viewers and attendees for joining us today. We have that this interview with Opimipo has provided valuable insight and inspiration. On behalf of the entire team, I would like to express our appreciation to Mr. Opimipo for his time, wisdom, and contribution to his interview. We wish you continued success in all your future endeavors. Thank you once again, and may your journey continue to inspire others.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you so much once again, and may each of you find inspiration, Mr. Opimipo's story, as you pursue your own passions and aspiration.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Bye. Had a wonderful day ahead.
You too. Bye.
Bye.